So, quick side video I'm going to make because I've seen something in my comments that I haven't addressed before. So, this will probably be a new set of people that I piss off, and I await their comments in my comment section. But whenever I talk about the supremacy of the US dollar and how that's likely not changing in my lifetime and how the US economy is going to continue to dominate, I get a subset away from the China argument, the yuan and Chinese economy argument, to discuss people discussing cryptocurrencies and how fiat currencies are in danger of being unseated by cryptocurrencies. And I disagree completely with that for a myriad of reasons. And I'm going to list them real quick. And these are just broad discussions on why I think cryptocurrency will not replace fiat currency. And this is coming from someone who has dabbled in cryptocurrency for a while, just kind of as a fun kind of act of gambling, so to speak. Firstly, fiat currencies are backed by governments. And those governments have a vested interest in maintaining the security and stability of their financial systems. They do this through their central banks because they have an interest in maintaining that stability and security, because if a financial system becomes unstable and unsecure, people lose trust in it and people start losing their money. Those government officials tend to lose their jobs, if not their lives, when people's money come into play. So often governments put massive security measures in place to protect these financial systems. It's not going to be so easy to have cryptocurrency come and unseat these systems when it doesn't take much for regulators to come in and say, ban cryptocurrencies. And we've seen this in China happen. We've somewhat seen it in other countries where they've banned certain exchanges. And the reality is the decentralized nature of cryptocurrencies being not backed by a government or a central authority. They can't really fight back against actual people making actual policy, and that policy is backed by laws, and those laws are backed by people with firearms or militaries to stop people from using those cryptocurrencies to undermine their system. Cryptocurrencies have been allowed to continue because they are largely a side project relative to the massive economy that is the global economy. But if cryptocurrency started creating volatility and uncertainty like they have within their own realm, with the rises and falls of Bitcoin, with the basic destruction of FTX, things like that, the governments and central banks would stand up and put a stop to that nonsense real quick. The other reason is acceptance. Now, fiat currencies are widely accepted. And I'm not just talking about where you can go down to your local store and make payments. That presents a problem of its own because the wild variability in the currencies mean that you don't necessarily know what you're going to be paying for if you use, Ripple or Bitcoin or some other Neo, whatever other current cryptocurrency you might be using. Not only is that a problem for just your standard grocery shopping or whatever, it's a problem for international trade. There's just the reason for the lack of acceptance is because of the volatility. It's hard to determine what the value of trade is going to be when the currency is wildly shifting up and down. And I'm not saying wildly like it's doubling, tripling, or losing double, triple the value. I'm saying it's like going up, $50 equivalent here or there. That's still significant on a global scale when you're talking about trillions of dollars of movement every single day. So because of the barriers to the widespread adoption, which include the regulatory hurdles, the limitations on tech. A lot of people just don't know how to use it, how to build it, how to create wealth, how to pay with cryptocurrency. So there's technological and understanding limitations in the general public. That becomes a problem for cryptocurrency as well. Thirdly, the fiscal policies that back fiat currencies can be used to manage an economy and promote stability. A big example of this is, think of the economy during the Great Depression. There was less regulatory guidance in place. There was so much volatility there. It was almost like the Wild West of currency during that time, and it was causing problems in trying to recover from the crashes in the Great Depression. Similar thing took place in 2008, but there were regulatory guidelines that made 2008 not as detrimental on the general public as it was. We didn't have like massive food lines and stuff. We keep hearing about these crashes that are coming, but since 2008, and most certainly since the early 1900s, regulatory policies have stabilized the economy. It's why we are seeing the Fed move up and down interest rates right now, and people get upset about the Fed, but the reality is because of the Fed, our economy has remained relatively stable and prospered. Cryptocurrencies, on the other hand, don't have those policy tools available, so they can't be managed for the economy. It makes them vulnerable to sudden changes in the market. If you have a whale, as people like to say, dump their currency, it could cause mammoth volatility in the systems and cause crashes across the board, and we would essentially be setting the clock back 100 years on our monetary policy, so that when we see inflation, it's not inflation of 7%, which is unfortunate. It's an inflation of 25%, or it's a deflationary event of even greater significance. So without those policies in place to manage the systems that keep the financial systems from completely crashing on us, those decentralized systems cause problems for those that may want to use it as a replacement to the fiat currencies. And then finally, fiat currencies are just, the more they get used, the more people use them, the more valuable they become. It's a positive feedback loop. It's called the network effect. And it's actually, the network effect is largely discussed in terms of the US dollar relative to other currencies. Everyone talks about how the growth of the Chinese dollar or the Chinese yuan or other currencies relative to the US dollar, but the bottom line is the US dollar is used more and more every day relative to other currencies. So when someone says the yuan has doubled in usage on the global stage, you were talking about a usage that went from 8% to like 1.6%, or excuse me, 0.8% to 1.6%, whereas the US dollar may not double. It may only grow by like 2% in global usage, but it's still a huge amount greater than what has increased for the yuan. The same effect takes place for cryptocurrencies. And this positive feedback loop means that the more stable the dollar remains and the more the dollar is shown to be a force that can be trusted, the more it's going to be used. The more it's used, the more it's trusted. It's a positive feedback loop. The problem with cryptocurrencies is they don't have that. They don't have the ability to show we're stable, so use us more, because they continue to fucking crash all the time, or they rocket up. It's very volatile. So there are benefits to cryptocurrency, specifically with regard to things like the blockchain. That absolutely is something worth discussing going forward. But with regard to actually using them as a replacement for the US dollar or even the yuan or the euro, it's just not going to happen. And I'm not even going to say it's not going to happen in my lifetime. It's just not going to happen, period.